The house smelled of old wood and books. That scent, unchanged for years, had seeped into the walls, the furniture, the air. It was always cool here, even in summer. Father disliked the heat, so the windows were almost always closed, letting in only rare beams of sunlight through the heavy burgundy curtains. Once, they had been vibrant, rich in color, but the years had faded them, just like the house itself, which now belonged to us. I walked slowly down the long corridor, running my fingers along the dark wooden panels. Here, Jack and I used to run as children, leaving scratches on the polished floor. Now, these marks from the past stared at us in silent reproach, reminding us of the days when everything was simpler. Now, our steps were careful, the silence rang in the air, and every movement felt irreversible. On the kitchen table lay the papers brought by the lawyer. Neatly stacked folders, compressed together, looked out of place in this house full of memories. Father had left us everything: the house, the accounts, the land, the business. Everything was divided equally, in the strict fairness that was characteristic of him. But neither of us wanted this inheritance. Not because it wasn't valuable. Its very existence meant one thing: Father was gone. His absence was in every corner, in every shadow, in every object that had once belonged to him. The armchair by the fireplace, where he loved to read in the evenings, remained slightly pulled back, as if he had just stood up and was about to return. But he wouldn't. Jack sat across from me, his fingers nervously tapping the edge of the table. We both remained silent, understanding that a decision had to be made. But what kind of decision? Part 2. The study that remembers everything. The study was a place Jack and I rarely entered as children. It was never locked, but it never occurred to us to go in without permission. Here, Father spent his evenings, working on something important, negotiating with people whose names we didn't know. This was his space, filled with strict discipline and the heavy scent of paper and old leather. A dark oak desk, a worn leather chair, rows of books on the shelves, everything remained in place. The books were not mere decorations. They were well read, their pages marked, corners folded. History, finance, law, philosophy. Father always believed that knowledge and control went hand in hand. I ran my hand over the desk. The surface was cold and smooth, except for a small dent in one place. I remembered the evening Father, frustrated by a failed deal, had thrown a heavy paperweight. The mark remained forever. It was one of the rare moments when we saw his weakness. He never spoke of his troubles, but this little flaw in his otherwise perfectly arranged workspace spoke volumes. Jack approached the safe. We knew that the most important documents were kept inside. He pulled out a set of keys and selected the right one. The click. The door opened. Inside, neatly stacked, lay a folder with the will. We remained silent. Part 3. Papers that determine fate. I unfolded the pages. Father always wrote in a neat, slightly left-slanted handwriting. Even here, in an official document, his character was felt in every line. I leave everything to my sons in equal shares. The house, the business, the land. They know what to do. The last sentence stood out from the rest. It was not just a formal clause but a directive. A message. But we didn't know what to do. The house was too large to live in but too valuable to simply sell. The business generated income, but it carried old obligations. And the land on which the house stood had belonged to our family for over a century. This was not just real estate, it was history. A history that couldn't simply be split in half. Jack exhaled heavily, rubbing his neck. Equal shares, he muttered. But what does that mean? He was right. Splitting the house in half was impossible. Splitting the business was complicated. And the land? We weren't farmers. We couldn't just take our halves and walk away. That wasn't what Father wanted. But what did he want? Part 4. The decision. The answer didn't come immediately. We argued for a long time, going over different options. Sell the business? But it supported dozens of people. Sell the land? But this was our home. We couldn't just abandon it. Eventually, we found a compromise. The business continued operating, but now we managed it together as partners. The land remained untouched, and the house stayed intact. We opened it for family, for future generations. It became not just an inheritance but a symbol of continuity, respect, and remembrance of our father. We didn't divide it because it already belonged to both of us. Without division, without disputes, without regrets. Part 5. New challenges. Months passed. We adapted to our new routine, but the challenges didn't end. Managing a business turned out to be more difficult than we had expected. Every day brought new questions, ones we didn't always have answers to. We had to learn, to understand, to trust each other. The house also required attention. We decided to restore it, to bring back its former grandeur. The old walls found new life, but we preserved their history. We didn't just live in it, we preserved a legacy. Part 6. The legacy that remains. Over time, the fear of inheritance faded. We realized that it wasn't a burden but an opportunity. An opportunity to preserve history, to create a future, to continue the work our father had once started. Now, this house isn't just a building. It's a place where our family gathers, where laughter echoes, where children run through the hallways, leaving new scratches on the floor. And we don't mind, because in those scratches, there is life. We didn't just inherit a house, a business, and land. We inherited meaning. And finally, we were ready to embrace it.